We are having you on our list of speakers for the 2022 EVV CON. How are you feeling about that?
I'm excited. I really am. You've got such a great slate of speakers, and I'm really just honored to be a part of that.
So what are you hoping to experience at EVV CON this year?
Well, I'm looking forward to being able to talk to as many people as possible. And that's always the goal with conferences like this, especially when they're online and you can reach massive groups of people if it's marketed well and if those people are interested in the conference. And I don't see why they wouldn't be interested in EVV CON. And I've watched all the marketing you've done for it. So I'm pretty excited about the fact that I'm going to have a lot of people to try to reach with some of the stories of how I've experienced technology through the pandemic, beyond the pandemic, and how it's worked in my speaking career and in my life.
Okay, speaking about speaking online, which is what you mentioned, something that has popped up in my head recently is being virtual takes away our uniqueness. During physical presentation, you can do something as far as walk up to your audience and charge them up, and it makes you unique. But on screen, you have to be more creative about that because it already, this shortchanges you. So how does one bring their unique self to the virtual world?
Well, everybody does it differently, and a lot of people feel the need to do different things. A lot of people will use the chat and do a lot of questions and answers, try to get some feedback that way. Other people will use PowerPoints and have the PowerPoint be a big part of the screen, and then they're just really small in the corner. And people will alternate with that. I've seen people use videos, people using sound, but let's face it, people do all those types of things in real life too. So all they're really doing is trying to bring some of those real life bells and whistles to video. But what works in real life more than anything else is being interesting as a speaker, having something compelling to say, telling stories that are exciting, that are funny, that people will remember, not just for the story, but for the point the story makes. That tends to be the type of speaker I am online. I don't use a lot of bells and whistles. I try to just be compelling, authentic with everything that I provide on screen. I mean, I don't have a fake background. That's my basement wall behind me. That's my floor you see in the corner. This is who I am. And ultimately, as a speaker, that's the best thing we can give our audiences, even though we can always augment it with other technological graphics and sounds and opportunities.
Well said, being compelling and authentic. Awesome. And I saw a little bit of that when you were responding. So you have titled your presentation for the workshop at EVV CON, Speak Anyway. And I don't know, is this something you've already presented before, probably at a different platform, or is it something new? What should your audience be expecting on the 23rd?
Well, I'm always talking about Speak Anyway to one degree or another, because I'm always encouraging people to find their voice and share their message. But for this presentation, what EVV CON wanted me to focus on was how to speak anyway, even with these supposed limitations we have now. We are limitations of being on Zoom or all the other various platforms are lessening. There's more and more regular platforms for us to return to, but at the same time, there's also an increasing amount of hybrid platforms. So sometimes we have to be on Zoom speaking to a conference that's happening in person, which I'll be doing in a few weeks. I'll be sitting here in Colorado while I'm speaking to a whole bunch of people in person in Wisconsin. Other times you're going to be speaking in front of an in-person group of people, but you're going to be broadcast on Zoom as well. those hybrid meetings where you've got to be able to watch the camera and keep both groups involved. But it's also going to go into my history when the pandemic first started and how I used it as an opportunity to speak more over the next 2 years than I had ever spoken before by using these virtual platforms. Having that experimental spirit is really just a form of flexibility, being able to roll with punches and understand that you're going to have to learn some new things. You're going to have to try some new things, learn some new technologies. For me, learning Zoom wasn't that hard. I'd used Skype in the past. And so using other platforms like Microsoft Teams really wasn't difficult. But for a lot of people, it's their first time ever. They're not sure if they can use their laptop or if they're using their iPad or using their phone, the differences between using those devices. People get faced with obstacles when it comes to technology all the time. So just getting onto a meeting, onto a conference call can be a challenge for the average human being. And that's what we faced when the pandemic hit, was that it wasn't just business people who were, around other people who could train them, who could give them the resources they needed. It was anybody sitting at home at any point in their life, despite whatever experience they did or did not have, were suddenly thrust into the need to know things that they never knew they would need to know. It's being open with that experimental spirit, open to learning and trying new things. And then once you're on, being able to go beyond that and learn some of the new ways you can use the platform, figuring out which cameras to use, what sound equipment you can use, what type of lighting to experiment with, what room you should be in your house. This is at least the fourth different place in my house that I have tried to do Zoom calls, and this turned out to be the best. I mean, it's the latest iteration, and that's what you're doing. You're always going from iteration to iteration as you try to improve what you're doing while still staying authentic to who you are. No matter how much experimentation you put out there, it's all designed to promote the message that you really want to give, that will really help your audience.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you. You use the word authentic a lot, and it's something I have heard used often. Do you feel it takes a lot of courage to be authentic?
Yeah, it can, because being authentic oftentimes involves letting people see parts of yourself that you don't necessarily want to show all that often. Or maybe it's less that you don't want to show it all that often as much as you've spent a lot of your life not showing it at all. And then you're realizing that by showing it, by sharing it, you're able to teach somebody a lesson. You're able to recall the lessons you've learned and then put that in front of somebody else so that they don't have to go through what you went through. Authenticity is a word that kind of gets thrown around way too much these days. People think it's kind of like transparency. It's really just being that person you really are. You don't have to overshare, but you want to share enough that people can identify with you. They see you as a real person. They don't turn you into a speaker that's speaking from Mount Olympus, throwing wisdom down like lightning bolts, but instead you're just like them. And you might as well be speaking to them all, if there's 5 or 5,000 one-on-one across the table at a Starbucks coffee.
I felt that. I felt that. So where do you draw the line between being authentic and oversharing?
I try to draw the line at when does it stop serving the audience? A lot of people will try to be authentic by oversharing and doing, in a sense, therapy on stage. They aren't ready to deal with it yet. And so when they share it, they're still dealing with it and not able to really use it in a way that's helpful to the audience. So you really have to have an understanding of the mess that you were in so that you can help other people from stepping into that mess. You know, it's an old saying that your message is found in your mess. But if you're still in the middle of your mess, well, you really have to kind of analyze what part of that mess have you already gone through versus what part of that mess are you still trying to get yourself past, and finding that line to continue to help your audience versus trying to mentally help yourself by sharing is that line that I work with.
So essentially, it's about the audience, not necessarily about you.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're not there to give a message for the audience, why are you there? They're there to be helped by you, not to help you.
Okay, I love that. So, do we all have to speak anyway? Can we all process our mess and then just keep it to ourselves? Is there something additional that comes with speaking regardless?
Well, what I want to do is give people permission to speak anyway. I mean, not everybody has to speak anyway. Not everybody wants to speak anyway. But what they need to understand is that they could. They have the value in their lives that they could share if they wanted to. They have the ability that can be enhanced, improved, that can be practiced to go out and share that message. Maybe if I can inspire someone who thinks they don't want to speak to understand that maybe they're keeping a very important message to themselves that could help other people if they did choose to speak anyway, that would be an ultimate victory in everything I do when I give these types of messages, when I'm encouraging people to join speaking groups, when I'm encouraging people to just get out there, because speaking anyway doesn't have to just be getting up and talking. It can be writing a blog, it can be podcasting, it can be doing YouTube videos, it can be writing a book. The key is getting that internal voice, the messages you hold inside your brain, and getting them out to the rest of the world one way or another.
Because the world deserves to hear all our stories. Awesome. So you are filled with such a wealth of wisdom. And I loved when you said that it doesn't matter the number of the audience, whether it's someone at Starbucks one-on-one or a crowd of 5,000. So my question is, for the forthcoming EVV CON, we've already done something like that. I want you to authentically speak to one person who is on their phone right now, considering whether or not they should register.
If you're considering EVV CON right now, you want to consider what you want to get out of it. And that's why we do anything in this life, is to get something specific out of it. So take a look at the speakers that are on the page that you're exploring while you're considering registering. Whose message do you want to hear most? And then sign up just for them. Because if you hear only one person, only one message that makes a difference, then going to EVV CON will make a difference. And it then opens you up to the opportunity of hearing more people and experiencing more possibilities beyond just the one that you're sure you want to provide yourself.